The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay. With experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
From the Fifth Quarter Studio in Madison, Wisconsin, you're listening to the Coaching Youth Hoops Podcast.
They're playing basketball.
Here's our hosts, Steve Collins, and Bill Flitter.
All right, welcome to Coaching Youth Hoops, episode 23.
23.
Right?
23.
Good number.
It's a great number. I mean,
MJ.
just think about that, right? We've come, it's 23 episodes. Started, a few months ago. A lot has happened since.
That's a retired jersey in my program.
Oh, yeah? Who?
Yeah. So Wesley Matthews. Anybody that wins, so I've had 4 Mr. Basketballs. If you're Mr. Basketball, I retire your jersey. Now, is it officially retired? No, because we don't do that, but I just don't buy the jersey.
Right.
No
one's
one's
hung in the rafters.
It doesn't get hung in the rafters or anything, but no one's worn those jersey numbers since they became Mr. Basketball.
And you've had 4 over the years.
At 4.
That's incredible.
It is. Yeah. It's good players. All right. So what's this week's topic?
We're talking about, so now that evaluations for a lot of coaches are coming up, picking their teams for the fall, youth teams, etc. We're talking about how to help parents be positive role models for your youth teams, because as any coach knows, has been coaching a little bit, parents play a big role in the success of your program. And, the joke is always, you don't pick the players, you pick the parents of those players to be on your team, right? The ones that are going to be helpful, the ones that are going to be supportive, right?
Right.
So we're going to talk about how do we help as a coach help parents be positive role models. And
from last week's episode when we talked about evaluations, I think it's really hard to separate the two entities, to separate the parent from the child.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. You got to be conscious of that separation. That last week was talking about evaluation and tryouts and picking the right team and picking the players.
Yeah.
And we're human, so I think that parent thing sneaks in sometimes, and you're really picking the player, and then you have to learn to hopefully deal with it. But there's some cross there. I think that we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. And some of the things that I've done what I don't want it to do as a coach, and even approaching this podcast, is you could get really negative on this subject and say parents are a pain and they ruin the blah, blah, blah. We've all heard this and we probably all have experienced this, but let's flip it. Like, how do we deal with, should we call them aggressive parents? You have to think about this and think about it. If you have your own children, they're the most precious thing in your world and you always want the best for them. And, you sitting in the stands, what you think is best for them is more playing time, more court time, and et cetera, right? From a coach's perspective, and you are in the inside of your day-to-day practices, you know how that child performs, how they perform a particular task. Did they show up for practice or not, right? Do they know the plays that you've worked on? Do they just come on game days, right? And then, you have to adjust your schedule. Well, parents just say, well, I'm here, I signed up, my child should be playing. And when they approach you, how do you deal with that? So what I always did, and even at the youth level, 3rd through 8th grade, is I had a parent meeting and I said, here are my rules, right? And we went through the rules of the team, not just for them, but overall, what my expectations were. And some people, which I didn't care, thought it was overkill, but on the same side, it's like I got that structure up front, right? And then anytime anyone said, complained, I always turned that into a positive and said, oh my gosh, you sound so passionate about that subject. Why don't you come to practice and work with us on that, teach that. We practice, hour and a half, hour, whatever, 2 to 3 days a week. And then you can sit on the sidelines with us as well and maybe take stats on that particular thing. I haven't yet have a parent take me up on that.
The high school level, I bet you would. That's the problem.
Well,
I think you would.
Yeah.
No, I think there's two things. I think first of all, everyone should have a parent meeting. You should also, just like the players, we want to teach them how to do things. I think you're not that you're going to teach a 45-year-old how to do things, but I think you have to spell out that your biggest job is to be your kid's biggest cheerleader and fan. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about the X's and O's. Don't worry about how many baskets. You are the first thing out of your mouth when they walk over should be, oh, it was so much fun watching you play today. Gosh, that was great. Oh, I bet you had a lot of fun. It should not be, wow, you weren't using your left hand enough or you weren't attacking. No, you should be. So I think as parents, as a coach, we have to coach the parents about what they should be. I mean, and I'm going to do this with my high school team this year. It's like, because I have a couple parents that I want them to be fans. I don't want them to be coaches. I want them to be fans. Enjoy watching I wish I could go back and watch my kid again. Go back and watch them. Be their biggest fan. Be their biggest supporter. Don't be their coach. They already have a coach. And again, the example I gave is, I mean, you could, if you really want to go, you could pull a parent up and say, here's the way you should interact. Like, I mean, that the psychology and the science behind it does that. Do not make it a negative. You didn't do this when they come over. It should be, I love watching you play. I love watching you give it all on your team and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is I think you have to over communicate to parents. From someone that's coached for 35 years.
What does that mean?
Over communicate. So let them know everything that's going on, when practices are, how practices are going to work, when we're going to be done, what's expected of the parents, what's expected of the players. I mean, you probably can't send too many emails because most problems occur because they didn't know practice was changing. They didn't know that they were expected to be at the tournament. And again, some of that might cause some conflict initially, but it's going to be if there is such a thing, a better conflict than a worse conflict when they didn't know that the tournament got changed to the next weekend. And
do you use any of the software out there like Team Snap to manage even your high school team?
That's your money saying it's time for a McDonald's run. Because with new McValue at McDonald's, you get more than you expect. Like buy a 6-piece McNuggets and add a McChicken for just $1. Your money says let's go. Get more than you expect with new McValue. Prices and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
I don't. I'm looking for a good one. I know there's a bunch out there.
Yeah.
With our players, my assistant coach does a lot of the Snapchatting because I'm old. They don't really do emails and stuff. But again, with parents and going back to the parent part, emailing, you should probably do it more than once too. If your inbox looks like my inbox, Like, hey, next week's tournament is changing from the morning to the afternoon. I'll send it on Monday. I'll send it on Wednesday. I'll send it on Friday. Mm-hmm. Hopefully one of those three gets through and opened. And if they've already read it, they're just going to trash it anyway. It doesn't matter. And no one's ever complained about over emailing or over communicating. I don't know. I just think that's a big thing.
I think you're right on with that. You can't say enough. And we use one of those tools. We use TeamSnap to manage our K through 12 teams, and anytime the schedule gets updated, it's integrated within their calendar. So that's one point of communication. But I think the other, or in addition to that, is sharing with them, and we're going to dive into some of this next week too, is who are you as a coach? What's your philosophy, right? So there's 101 ways. We always say there's 101 ways to coach this game. Parent in the stand knows their influence in the way that they maybe have experienced the game, and you come from a different interpretation, have a different philosophy. Doesn't mean you're right, doesn't mean they're right. It's just a different way of approaching the game and teaching the game. So when there a lot of times that comes from the parent is looking at the game saying, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I think the other thing is just that is part of your communication, is who you are as a coach and what you believe in and what your philosophy is. You don't have to go deep into it, but just give an overview. That will save a lot of discussion.
Yeah, like who are you as a coach I think that's an important thing. I just think it is. It's like and especially at the youth level, it's all about, and we'll say this a billion times, as a youth coach, you should never be the kid's last coach. Yeah. So it's about that relationship, and the relationship isn't only about the kids, especially when they're 10. It's about the parent relationship too. And if the parents are, the kid might give it up and not want to because the parent's not having a great experience about it either. So, it's just, I think there's a window there with that, I think.
Well, let's talk about playing time too. That's obviously the biggest one, right? Make sure you detail out if your league, some leagues, like I know ours always had playing time rules. Make sure the parents understand what that means and how you will do rotations. Now, from a coach's perspective, if you're teaching a youth, every kid should play, as much as possible, much that makes sense. The issue that we always ran into is players didn't come to practice and they showed up for the game, and then you still had that playtime rule, right? Where you had to play them if they were there, but they didn't come to any of the practices. And that's a tough thing. And you just follow the rule in that particular case, play them if they're not showing up for practice, play them the minimum you have to, so you're rewarding the players that have been showing up for practice. But again, communicate playing time, how you're going to do it. If you don't have any, rules in place for the league, with the league that you're in. Huge thing.
It's a huge thing. All right. Anything else, Coach?
Again, let's recap. So explain everything, over communicate, explain your playing time, talk about your philosophy with your parents. And this all just goes back to the communication piece. Really, it's just tell them your philosophies, your thinking, your playing time rules, etc., and you'll solve a lot of those. Have a 24-hour rule. Don't talk to me after, wait 24 hours if you're upset. Maybe even, I know you do that's at the high school, I do as well, and I always did at the grade school level, is both child and parent are present in those discussions, because, Johnny and Sally know what's going on in practice and the parents don't.
Right.
So
I agree. How long have you been married, Coach?
It'll be actually next week, Sunday, 23 years.
23, and I've been 24. And Coach and I can tell you, communication, if you don't communicate, so that's a life lesson. We're giving all the youth coaches life lessons, because there might be some youngsters out there. You better talk to your spouse.
That's right.
All right. Till next week, Coach.
Till next.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.